2 years is a long time to be correct. Kang Jae-hyun had paid his debt in full. He had stood at an altar, held a ring, placed it in his best friend's hand, kept his face composed through the vows and the kiss and the applause, and driven home alone through a city that still rearranged itself around his presence. He had done it correctly. He had done it completely. He had woken up the next morning and gone back to work and not looked in the mirror on the way out. The only thing nobody told him was what came after correctly, what came after completely, when the debt was settled and the room was quiet and the man left standing in it was still, somehow, entirely alone. If you're new to this channel, subscribe right now, hit that like button, and drop a comment below, because this is part 3, this is Jae-hyun's story, and your comments made this happen. Sung-ho was recovered, semi-retired, spending more evenings at home with Amanda than in the field, which was exactly what a man who had been held in a warehouse for 3 days and driven home in a back seat with his wife's hand in his deserved. The inner circle had been restructured after the betrayal uncovered in part 2, tightened, reduced, rebuilt on verification rather than assumption. Jae-hyun ran everything alone now, cleaner than before, sharper than before, more powerful than he had ever been, and more isolated than he had ever been. And he had made a private peace with both of those facts because he had long since decided they were the same thing. His days were full. His evenings were empty. He filled both with work and called the arrangement discipline and did not examine it further. Ryu, his second for 11 years, watched him the way loyal men watch their leaders when they are worried, but have not been given permission to say so. The breach was discovered on a Wednesday. For months of slow, careful financial bleeding, small amounts, irregular intervals, accounts that were checked less frequently, gaps in the oversight rhythm that only someone who knew the organization's internal tempo could have identified and exploited. Jae-hyun's financial team caught the pattern by accident, which was the most unsettling part. It hadn't been found. It had surfaced, which meant whoever was running it had become comfortable, which meant they'd been doing it long enough to stop being careful. Ryu delivered the briefing without decoration. The breach was internal, upper structure, which meant no one inside could be trusted to investigate it without the investigation itself becoming compromised. The solution was an outside specialist, someone with no ties to their world, no loyalty that could be bought, no agenda beyond the fee. Someone who had worked adjacent to organizations like theirs before and understood how to move through dangerous rooms without disturbing the atmosphere. He set a single file on the desk. Her name is Zara. Her record is exceptional. Jae-hyun opened the file. He read it in 4 minutes. Forensic corporate investigator, early 30s, 8 years of practice, a list of completed assignments that range from multinational corporations to organizations that didn't appear in any public registry. Clean, precise. No complaints from any client in 8 years, which in her line of work meant she was either exceptionally good or exceptionally careful. Probably both. Schedule the first meeting, he said. Monday. He set the file aside and went back to work and did not think about it again until she walked through the door. She was not what he expected. He didn't know what he had expected. The file was a file. It told him her record. Not her, but whatever the expectation was, she walked past it without noticing it was there. She set her bag down at the conference table, opened her laptop, looked at the 6 men seated around her with the easy composure of a woman who had walked into rooms exactly like this one many times and found them entirely manageable, and within 60 seconds delivered a 2-line summary of the breach pattern that his 3 senior analysts had spent 4 days trying to articulate. The room recalibrated. She read it. She read every room. He would learn this about her, and was mildly unimpressed by the recalibration. She had seen it before. She turned to the head of the table. Her eyes found Jae-hyun, and she did what she did with every room. She read it. She moved through the faces, the postures, the arrangement of power. And then she stopped. She could not read him. He was the first person in her professional life who was completely unreadable. Not because he was performing blankness, but because whatever lived behind the wall was so entirely contained that there was nothing on the surface to find. She registered this the way she registered all useful information, filed it, noted it, moved on to the briefing. Jae-hyun, for his part, noticed her noticing. He noticed the precise moment she encountered the wall, the half-second of professional recalibration, and the decision she made to continue without addressing it. He noticed that she made that decision without showing it on her face. Something behind the wall shifted without permission. He told himself it was professional interest. She was exceptional at her work. That was relevant. He told himself that for 3 days before he stopped fully believing it. The first week moved with the tight efficiency of someone who knew exactly what she was doing and required very little from the people around her except accurate information and unobstructed access. Zara moved through the organization like a current, present everywhere, visible only when she chose to be. She asked questions no one in Jae-hyun's circle would have dared ask him. She pushed back on his initial read of 2 suspects without apology and explained precisely why each read was incorrect, and she was right on both counts. And she did not make a performance of being right. She simply moved to the next question. Jae-hyun, who had not been professionally contradicted in approximately 3 years, found the experience disorienting in a way he could not immediately catalog. He showed up to every briefing. He stayed later than was strictly necessary. He told himself the breach was serious enough to require his personal oversight on every detail. Ryu said nothing, but his expression on the 3rd morning said everything. Into the first week, the conference room empty except the 2 of them. Documents open on both laptops. The work conversation ended and neither of them closed their screens. What followed was not planned by either of them. It simply happened the way things happen when 2 people who are both paying careful attention to everything find themselves in the same room, without an agenda for the first time. Zara talked about her work the way people talk about things they actually love, not the record, not the achievements, but the instinct, the specific moment in a room when the hidden pattern becomes visible. The way information has a shape when it's trying to conceal itself. It sits differently than information that's simply absent. Jae-hyun listened with the full and undivided attention. He gave nothing except things that mattered to him. And she noticed that too. When she finally closed her laptop and stood to leave, she paused at the door and said, "You listen differently from most people." He looked up. "How do most people listen?" She picked up her bag, like they're waiting for their turn to speak. She left. He sat in the empty conference room for longer than was necessary. Zara had a rule. She had maintained it for 8 years without difficulty, because no client had ever made it difficult. Clean lines, clean exits, no room she couldn't walk out of on her own terms. She applied the rule to Jae-hyun for 4 days with the professional discipline that had built her reputation. She was efficient. She was precise. She kept every interaction within the strict scope of the assignment. On the 4th day, she was in the conference room alone at 7 in the evening when he appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. One black, one with exactly what she took in hers. She looked at the cup, then at him. "How did you know?" He set it down without making anything of it. "You ordered the same thing 3 mornings in a row." "I pay attention." He left. She sat with the coffee for a long time. The rule, she told herself, was still in place. She just needed to be more careful. She believed this for approximately 1 hour before she stopped. On day 8, she did what she always did when she wanted to understand someone. She researched, not the professional file she already had, the human one. She was careful and thorough, and she found what was there to find. Not the full version, not the private version, but enough. A woman, a best friend, a public dismissal at a gala, a wedding, a rescue operation 2 years ago that no official record fully explained, but that several people in adjacent circles referenced in careful terms. She assembled the picture with the same instinct she applied to everything. She sat with it for a full day. It was not the story of a powerful man who got what he wanted. It was the story of a powerful man who said something irreversible, understood the full cost of it, and paid every cent without being asked, without an audience, and without once asking for credit. In her 8 years of working inside rooms full of dangerous, powerful men, she had never encountered that combination before. She found it more significant than anything in his professional file. The next evening, she walked into his office without knocking. She sat down across from him without being invited. She looked at him directly. What actually happened with her? He went completely still. The measuring look came. She had learned to recognize it. The 3-second calculation where he checked for exploitation, for judgment, for hidden agenda. She held his gaze and gave him nothing to find except what was actually there. Direct, genuine, unperforming curiosity. He told her, the real version. No editing, no protection. The gala. The words he said out loud, because saying things out loud had always been how he controlled what he felt about them, and it hadn't worked. Sung-ho, seeing her clearly on the exact night, he dismissed her. The months of distance. The dinner party where he watched his best friend top off her glass before she had to ask. The study. Her saying I know and walking past him and him standing in the doorway long after the sound of her heels had faded. The altar. The ring. His best friend's face when she walked toward them in white. The drive home. The 2 years since. He told all of it without making himself smaller than it was or larger than it was. And when he finished, the room held the specific quiet of a place where something real had just been said. Zara was silent for a long moment. You paid the full price. Yes. Without anyone asking you to. There was no one to ask. She absorbed that. Then, carefully, that is either the most loyal thing I have ever heard, or the loneliest. He looked at her. It was both. That was the moment. Not a dramatic moment. No music, no movement, nothing visible to anyone who might have been watching. Just a crack, small and permanent, in a wall that had never had one before. If this story is moving you, hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel, because what comes next is the part of this series that your comments built, and it only gets more intense from here. The investigation entered its second week, and the breach went deeper than anyone had assessed. Zara followed the financial trail with the focused precision that had defined her entire career, not looking at what was present, but at what was missing, at the gaps, at what the arrangement of the data revealed about the person who arranged it. She cross-referenced account activity against the organization's internal calendar. She mapped the timing of each withdrawal against the specific dates when oversight protocols relaxed. She built a picture that became increasingly uncomfortable the further it developed. This was not opportunistic. The amounts were not random. The timing was not coincidental. This had been planned by someone who understood the organization, not just structurally, but rhythmically. Someone who knew when to move and when to wait and how long both required. This was someone Jae-hyun trusted completely. Someone he had trusted for a very long time. She found a name on a Tuesday afternoon. She checked it 3 times before she accepted the evidence. Then she sat with it for 2 hours. Not because she doubted what she had found, but because she understood exactly what it was about to cost the man she had to bring it to. She walked into his office. She closed the door. She set the file on the desk and looked at him directly. I need you to be prepared for what's in here. Jae-hyun looked at her. I'm always prepared. Not for this. He opened the file. He read it. The name belonged to a man who had been in his inner circle before the Part 2 restructuring. A man who had survived the restructuring because Jae-hyun personally vouched for him, looked at every name on that list, and said this one is clean. 18 years of history between them. 18 years of runes and decisions and the specific trust that builds between men who have survived things together. He read it twice. His expression did not collapse. It held, with the precise and total control a man who had spent his entire life keeping his face composed in rooms that required it. For exactly 4 seconds. And then, underneath the control, something human and genuinely wounded surfaced in his dark eyes in the only unguarded moment Zara had ever seen from him. She stayed in her chair. She did not manage it, did not soften it, did not look away from it. She simply witnessed it, because she had understood since the first morning that this man did not need management. He needed someone willing to stay in the room. The silence was long. Then, I vouched for him. I know. After Busan, after everything we rebuilt, I looked at every name on that restructuring list, and I told them he was clean. His voice was quiet and completely controlled, and the control was costing him more than usual. I was wrong. You trusted someone for 18 years, Zara said, and they used it against you. That is not a failure of judgment. That is what betrayal is. It only works on people who are capable of loyalty. He looked at her. The wall was still there. It was always there, structural, permanent, part of his architecture. But there was a door in it now, and it was open. Why are you still here? He asked. Not about the assignment. About her. Here. At this hour. After all of it. She held his gaze with a steady directness that had not changed since day one. Because I haven't finished yet. He understood she did not mean the file. That night, he called Sung-ho. Not with a professional briefing. Ryu handled that. He called because 24 years had established that certain things Sung-ho heard first. He told him a name. Sung-ho was quiet for a long moment. Then how are you? Not the organization. Not the breach. Him. Handling it. Jae-hyun. I know. Sung-ho's voice shifted. Careful, warm, reading every layer of Find the Way he had been reading it for 2 decades. The investigator. Zara. A pause. Ryu mentioned her. Silence. He said you've been in every single briefing. It's a serious breach. He also said you stayed 2 hours after the last one ended. Jae-hyun said nothing. Outside his penthouse window, the city moved through its nighttime patterns. Indifferent, continuous, exactly as it always was. Come to dinner, Sung-ho said. Both of you. The next morning, Jae-hyun found Zara in the conference room. He sat down across from her, not at the head of the table, at the side, level with her. She noticed. She noticed everything. I'd like you to come to dinner. With my best friend and his wife. She looked at him steadily. Is this professional? No. A pause. You want me to meet the people from the story? Yes. What? He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, it was in the careful, honest register she had now heard from him 3 times. The voice underneath the wall, the one that had no armor on it. Because you know the full version of who I was. I want you to meet the people who know the full version of who I became. Zara looked at him for a long time. She was doing the thing she did. Reading him. She could read him now. Not because he had become easier, but because he had started choosing to let her in. And the difference between those 2 things was everything. Friday, she said. Friday. He stood. He walked toward the door. Then he stopped and turned back. An uncharacteristic thing. A Jae-hyun thing that she had not seen before. The small human gesture of a man who has something left to say and is deciding to say it. For what it's worth, he said quietly, you were right about the 2 suspects. She looked at him. I'm always right about the suspects. The corner of his mouth moved. It was not quite a smile. It was something smaller and more real. And it was the first time she had seen it on him, and she understood immediately that very few people ever had. I know, he said, and left. Zara sat in the empty conference room for longer than was necessary. The dinner was at Sung-ho and Amanda's home. Warm, private, entirely unlike anything in Jae-hyun's world, which was either the point or the relief or both. Zara walked in with the same self-contained composure she carried everywhere. She shook Amanda's hand in the entrance hall, and within 10 minutes they were at the table, finishing each other's observations about a professional situation neither of them had been asked about. They had simply both read the same thing in the same room, and arrived at identical conclusions by different routes. Amanda looked across at Sung-ho. Sung-ho looked across at Jae-hyun. Jae-hyun looked back at his best friend and felt something he had not felt at a dinner table in a very long time. Not out of place. The conversation moved through the evening with the ease of people who are genuinely interested in each other rather than performing interest. Zara asked Sung-ho about his work, the semi-retired version, the adjusted life, and listened to his answers the way she listened to everything, with the full focus of someone who is actually curious. Sung-ho, who had spent 24 years watching Jae-hyun navigate rooms, watched Jae-hyun watch Zara and said nothing. His expression said everything. After the meal, while Amanda and Zara were in the kitchen continuing a conversation that had apparently not required the men's participation for the past 20 minutes, Sung-ho found Jae-hyun in the corridor. Their corridor. The one they had stood in after 100 dinners over 24 years. The one where the real conversations happened because it was the place between the room they had come from and the door they were about to leave through, and the distance made honesty easier. She's different, Sung-ho said. Yes. She doesn't need anything from you. No. That's exactly what you need. Sung-ho looked at him the way he had always looked at him, with the specific clarity of a man who had known his best friend before the wall was fully built and never forgot what was underneath it. You spend your whole life being chosen by rooms, by power, by position. You've never been chosen by a person who had no reason to choose you. Jae-hyun was quiet. She has no reason, Sung-ho said, and she's still here. Jae-hyun looked at his best friend across 24 years of everything, Everything they built, everything they survived, the altar, the drive home, the phone call from the warehouse, all of it. I know. Sung-ho put his hand on his shoulder. Then don't say something stupid this time. Jae-hyun looked at him. I don't intend to. You intended that last time too. Last time I said it in front of 12 men at a bar. And it cost you 3 years. Yes. Sung-ho squeezed his shoulder once. The grip of 24 years. The grip that had crossed through every version of both of them. Good, he said. Then we're clear. Before they left, Amanda found a quiet moment with Jae-hyun near the front door. She looked at him the way she had always looked at him. Directly, without performance. With the clear and unhurried gaze of a woman who had spent years seeing him exactly as he was and had arrived at a settled and complete opinion. There was no coldness in it tonight. No distance. What was present was something simpler and more final. The expression of a woman who is watching a chapter close exactly as it should. She sees you, Amanda said. The real version, not the one you perform. Jae-hyun said nothing. That is the rarest thing in your world. A pause. Don't waste it. He held her gaze. I won't. She nodded once. A single nod that carried the full weight of everything. The gala, the corridor, the study, the handshake, the altar, the ring, the drive home, the years. Closed completely. Without drama. Without unfinished feeling. With the quiet dignity of two people who had always respected each other enough to be honest, and were being honest now in the most final and gracious way available to them. She went back to her husband. Jae-hyun stood at the door for a moment, and understood that the sentence that had begun the night, he opened his mouth at a bar, and said something he could not take back had just ended. Not with loss, not with regret, with the specific and peaceful completion of something that had run its full course and arrived exactly where it was supposed to. He found Zara. They left together. In the car, she was quiet for the first few minutes. Not uncomfortable quiet, the quiet of someone processing. Then, she's remarkable. Yes, he said. She read the room at the front door before she took her coat off. She always does. Zara looked at him. You've been watching her do that for years. Yes. And it never, she stopped. He looked at her. It was never the right story, he said quietly. For either of us. A pause. This one is. Zara looked at him for a long moment. Outside the window Seoul moved past in its nighttime version. The lit windows, the streets, the city that still rearranged itself around the man in the driver's seat whether he noticed or not. She had read 300 rooms in her career. She had walked into every one of them alone and walked out of every one of them the same way and called it freedom because she had never had a reason to call it anything else. She was beginning to understand the difference between freedom and avoidance. She suspected he had been the one to teach her that without meaning to. The assignment is finished on Thursday, she said. I know. Clean lines, clean exits. She said it the way a person recites a rule they are no longer fully convinced by. Is that what you want? He asked. Direct. Unmanaged. She looked at him. No, she said. It isn't. He drove. Neither of them said anything else. But the silence between them for the rest of the drive was the silence of two people who had just said the most important things and were sitting comfortably inside the weight of them. And that, Jae-hyun thought, was the most different thing about her. Every silence he had ever sat in had cost him something. This one didn't. This one felt like the opposite of cost. This one felt like the first honest rest he had ever taken. Thursday. The investigation was complete. The breach contained. The name at the end of the financial trail handled with the cold and absolute efficiency Jae-hyun applied to all things that required it. The file was closed. The assignment was finished. Zara was still in the conference room at 9 o'clock in the evening. Jae-hyun sat down across from her, not at the head of the table. Across from her. The assignment is closed. I know. She did not close her laptop. She did not reach for her bag. She sat with the same composed self-possession she had carried into his office on the first morning and looked at him with the steady, direct gaze that had not changed since day one. Then why are you still here? She held his gaze. Because I want to be. A pause, which is unusual for me. Another pause, smaller, more deliberate. I thought you should know that. The room was very quiet. Then Jae-hyun did the thing. Not impulsively. Nothing he did was impulsive. That was not who he was, but deliberately. Completely. with the full and clear-eyed intention of a man who has spent 2 weeks understanding the difference between discipline and avoidance, and has made a decision about which one he is going to choose from this point forward. I've spent my entire life being the most powerful person in every room, he said, and the loneliest person in every room. At exactly the same time, I told myself those were the same thing, that the loneliness was the price of the power and the price was worth it. He looked at her directly. I built a wall, and I called it discipline, and I maintained it for so long that I forgot it was a wall. I thought it was just who I was. Zara said nothing. She listened the way she listened to everything, with her full self, without interruption, without preparing her response while he was still speaking. You are the first person, he said, who has made me understand the difference between discipline and avoidance. Not because you told me, because I watched you, the way you work, the way you move through a room, the way you hold your own life with both hands and require nothing from anyone. And I recognized it. I recognized myself in it. And I understood for the first time that what I was looking at was not strength. He paused. It was the same thing I have been doing, just with better posture. The corner of Zara's mouth moved. I'm not easy, he continued. I'm not built for softness, and I am not going to perform softness to make this easier to hear. But I am loyal beyond what most people in my world can imagine. And I spent 2 years being loyal to a version of myself that was smaller than what I am capable of. He looked at her. I don't want to do that anymore. Zara looked at him for a long moment, at the face that had been unreadable to her on the first morning, that she could read now not because he had become simpler, but because he had chosen to let her in, and the difference between those two things was everything. That, she said quietly, is the most honest thing you have said to me. I know, it took you 2 weeks. For me, he said, that is fast. I know, she said. I read your file. He looked at her, and Kang Jae-hyun, who had built an empire in a city full of dangerous men, who had stood at an altar and held a ring for someone else, who had driven home alone more times than he could count, felt the specific and completely unfamiliar warmth of being seen by someone who had gone looking for the real version of him and decided, with full information, to stay. 3 months later, he asked her to marry him. Not in a restaurant, not with an audience. In his penthouse, at the window, the same window he had stood at for 2 years building the wall. Because he wanted the proposal to happen in the exact place where the wall had lived so that both of them understood completely what was being replaced. She was standing at the glass looking at the city when he came to stand beside her. He did not reach for the ring immediately. The words first, because with her the words had always been the thing. I've spent my life being the most powerful person in every room and the loneliest person in every room, and I chose both of those things deliberately. I told myself it was strength. He turned to face her. I'm not easy. I am not built for softness, and I will not pretend otherwise. But I'm the most loyal person you will ever know, and I am asking you to let me spend whatever comes next being loyal to you. He opened the box. The ring caught the city light through the glass. Marry me. Zara looked at the ring, then at him, at the face she had read on the first morning and found unreadable, that she could read now entirely. Every chapter written on it, the gala, the altar, the drive home, the 2 years, the warehouse, all of it, the full and complete story of a man who had become someone worth choosing by doing the slow and unglamorous work of paying what he owed without asking for credit. She had made her decision with full information. No illusions. Both eyes open. Yes, she said. The way she said everything that mattered. Clearly, without performance, without making it smaller or larger than it was. He exhaled. She laughed. He slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her in and held her with the specific relief of a man putting down something very heavy he has been carrying for a very long time. And she let him, and for a moment neither of them said anything because there was nothing left that needed saying. The wedding was 30 people. No grand performance. Just the exact size of a life built with intention. Sung-ho stood as best man. Of course he did. 24 years of everything had always been leading here. Amanda sat in the front row with her hand in his, watching the doors. Ryu sat 3 rows back and did not bother hiding that he was relieved. The doors opened. Zara walked in wearing ivory. Not white, ivory, because she made every choice deliberately, moving down the aisle with that particular unhurried purpose that was entirely her own. She looked at no one except the man at the altar. He watched her come and felt, for the first time in his life, that he was standing in exactly the right place at exactly the right time and had done nothing to deserve it except become, finally and completely, the version of himself that had always been underneath the wall. When she reached him, he took her hand. She looked up at him. He looked down at her. Neither of them spoke for exactly one moment. Just the full weight of everything it had taken to arrive here, held between them, acknowledged and released. Sung-ho leaned slightly and said, barely audible, "Don't say something stupid." Jae-hyun did not look at him. "Sut-woo, Shung-ho." From the front row, Amanda laughed, genuinely, freely, the kind that carried no performance in it all. The vows were honest and undecorated, the same way both of them said everything that mattered. When the officiant said you may kiss your bride, there was no tight jaw, no fixed point past the altar, no 3 seconds of controlled cost paid in full without complaint. Kang Jae-hyun kissed his wife and was not managing a single thing in the world. The narration closed the trilogy the way it had opened the first story, with the truth delivered without mercy and without decoration. He had been right about one thing from the very beginning. She was a distraction. The first one distracted him from his arrogance long enough to show him exactly what it cost. The second, his best friend's wife, the woman he had dismissed and spent years paying for, distracted him from his pride long enough to make him into someone capable of the third. And the third, standing beside him now, her hand in his, the city glittering behind them through the window where the wall used to be, distracted him from every smaller version of himself until only the real one remained. 3 stories, 1 arc. A man who began as the villain of someone else's love story and earned his way to the center of his own, not by being rescued, not by being redeemed, by doing the slow and unglamorous and completely unwitnessed work of becoming someone worth choosing. And then, when the right person finally walked through the door he had built in the wall, choosing to let her. Some walls don't come down. They just get a door. And the right person walks through it. And that is enough. That is everything. If this trilogy moved you, if Jae-hyun's story gave you everything you voted for, subscribe to this channel right now. Like this video and drop a comment telling us, was the ending worth the wait? We read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, more slow burns, more women who never beg to be chosen, more men who have to earn every single thing, hit that notification bell so you never miss what comes next. See you in the next story.